Hello and welcome to, as I've just been reminded, episode 16 of the Lucy and Tim Show. Common sense, sometimes comment about care, always. Now, this morning I posted on LinkedIn that we had 4 special guests. And then Lucy told me that one of you might not show up, but you all did. So we've got 4 very special guests today and a very important topic to discuss. But first of all, I've got to say hello to my fellow collaborator, conspirator, Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hello, Tim.
Are you well?
I think so.
Good.
I haven't thought about it much, to be honest.
Okay. So are you excited that we've got 4 special guests for the first time ever?
It's so lovely to see so many faces on the screen and to see such fabulous people.
And she really sounded sincere then, didn't she?
I actually, strangely, genuinely, I meant it, and absolutely everybody on this call knew that I genuinely mean it.
So let's say hello to our guests, and I'm going to do them in no particular order other than start with Julie, because Julie's next to me on the screen. So, Julie Garrity, would you like to tell our listener, our viewer, a little bit about you?
All right, well, we'll keep it very simple. Julie Garrity. I currently run my own small loan trader bit of a business, but my background is 22 years in CQC and I'm a general nurse. That do?
And you missed out the most important bit.
What's that?
We were born in the same hospital.
Oh, I forgot that bit. Yeah, I was born in the same hospital as Tim, but yeah, I'm a little bit older. I know I don't look it.
And they've knocked it down now.
Oh, yes, go.
Okay. Our next guest is Ben. Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Miller. I'm really happy to be in such esteemed company. I'm a registered mental health nurse and I've just started a new job at Evergreen Care Services managing the Elms Care Home in Staunton, Gloucestershire.
Thank you, Ben. And Paula.
That me? Okay, I'm Paula Cashmore, independent care quality consultant, history in CCG, NHS inspections, registered manager, regional manager, and the Mary Poppins of social care.
And Sue. Hello, Sue.
Hi, hello, and it's great to be here with you all today. I'm Sue Jones. I'm Director of Social Care for the Institute of Health and Social Care Management. And if people don't know what we do, we actually provide leadership support, practical leadership support to health and social care.
Excellent. So, our question. And this came up when Lucy and I recorded episode 15 of the Lucy and Tim Show, didn't it, Lucy?
Yeah.
And I don't know how it came up, and actually I can't remember what episode 15 was about now. But we were discussing people's experiences, weren't we?
We were. And
you see how they came back to me then?
I said there was something I didn't like.
And that thing was?
Referencing of care plans as care plans.
So that's when we thought, let's get some clever people and ask them what they think, because we've got our opinion. But we've had this term care plan, I don't know for how long, probably longer than I am old. And is it appropriate today? So what do our guests think? Who'd like to start it? And please try not to all speak at the same time. So first person to shout gets to go. At which point they all go dead quiet and don't speak.
Now I'm going to speak, but I'm going to speak.
Okay, go on. Thank you, Sue.
I'm going to speak from a personal perspective, because my dad is going through this at the moment, and for me, I have been saying that even the word care implies that somebody is doing something to somebody. And I just feel uncomfortable with that on that basis. So how do we get to a point where this is actually something that should be empowering people? It should be creating this independence. It should be doing something. I mean, what actually should a care plan be doing, and who is it for? Because for me, I read care plans and I think to myself, who is this actually for? Is it to tick the box or is it designed to actually create something that's worth something to the person who's supposed to belong to that care plan?
I really support that. And I know this isn't about what I think, but for me, I find it a really uncomfortable word. And when my daughter was in hospital, she had no care plans. So as her mum, I wrote her care plans. Now, who were those care plans for? Were they for her? Or were they tick a box because the nurse said nurses don't have time to write care plans?
That's powerful stories based on personal opinion. What about from a professional perspective? Ben, what do you think?
It's interesting because I agree that I find a lot of care plans are just tick box exercises, and we get given all this software now, don't we? Which is great. It's supposed to generate our care plans for us based on information we put in. But I've worked in several different settings now where actually nobody who works there reads the care plans. The care plans are literally there for a box ticking exercise. They're there so that when CQC come in, we can say, this is how we provide care for this person. Or when the local authority come in to do assessments on their funding, or when the psychs team come in. And that's not really person-centered because we're doing it for other people and not for the person themselves. Because in my opinion, any self-respecting care setting, whether that's dom care or care homes or support living or anything, if you work there, you should know the person, ideally. There should be something that tells you when they're new what their needs are. But let's be fair, I've gone into several training sessions, manual handling, for example, where the manual handling trainer's gone, it should say in the care plan what loops need to go on the sling, on the hoist. And pretty much everyone in the room goes, we ain't got time to look at the care plan, so we just know that's what we've got to do. So, yeah, I what you would call them, I don't know, but are they even worth the paper or computer screens they're written on, really? I haven't got an answer to that. That's just a hypothetical.
I think they're mostly to tick a box. And I agree with you completely that most of them are not read. Service I've been in recently, staff are required to read them and sign to say they've read them. But despite doing so, they never found the deliberate mistakes the manager left in there that weren't deliberate, actually. You know, where the person's name changes halfway through. Or in one case, 30 years got knocked off their age. They went from being 51 to being in sixth form college. I mean, obviously the manager left that in deliberately to see if the staff read it properly. What about you, Paul? What about Julie? You want to go?
I wanted to sort of qualify something that seems to be a big problem, as well as what do we actually define as a care plan? Because wherever I go, is it the actual care plan? Is it the assessment and the plan and the daily records and the review? Because everybody calls all of that process a care plan, but that's not a care plan, is it? That's a process.
I'll make it even more complicated. Depends what country you go to.
Because it also depends on what service you're in as well.
So where I live in Wales, the care plan is actually the document created by the local authority social worker.
There's that too.
The document that the individual has, because we don't call them service users in Wales, we call them individuals, is called a personal plan. So in care services in Wales, we do not look after service users or residents, we look after individuals. And they have personal plans, they have individual personal plans. Now, Ben, you mentioned software, and then you said it's all great. Well, I would say, no, it isn't all great. Most of it's crap. And it's really crap if you run services in Wales. Sorry, I've just disrespected all the digital care plan software, but there you go. I've done that.
Paula,
so, Paula, what do you reckon?
Paula.
What do I reckon? My first question is, does it matter? And we have to think, is it a battle worth fighting? And also, what do we define care plan as? And I think even this short discussion in the last few minutes has shown that we all think that care plans are different things. So how are we defining care plan? How are we defining care? Is care given, or is care something I care for my vase, I don't do anything for it, but I look after it and protect it. So are we looking after and protecting our clients? And does that plan show us the best way that we are, and protecting them can be in a, empowering them and maintaining their independence? So I think it's a much bigger subject than we've probably got time for. But is there a better term? It's interesting what Tim said about what is the definition is in Wales.
Very different. I mean, maybe we should call them a do as little as possible plan. Because that would be empowering, wouldn't it?
I think some carers already think that anyway, Tim.
Oh, I think all of the ones that you ever used to employ, Paula, that was their mantra. That was their job, do as little as possible. But they recognised sometimes a little bit was a lot. But just because it's a lot today doesn't mean it's a lot tomorrow.
Yeah,
But on the opposite, go on.
I really I echo what Ben says about most people. They know their client, their individual.
Yeah.
They know what their needs are, and if you've got a good handover and a good communication system, that's the way that care is, the plan of care, the plan of what you're helping that person with is delivered. So do we need it documented in 12 different sections of a book or a software package?
Now, that's really interesting that you mentioned 12.
Well, it's the Keenan Roper and
Nancy
Roper
Roper.
and Tina.
Yes.
And I think if we're talking about bringing things more up to date, we have to do what Churchill did. We have to look back to see forward, don't we? And fundamentally, Roper, Logan and Tierney is nearly 50 years old. So are we actually saying that fundamentally, based on something it's social support, isn't it? Not a nursing process as such. And is it that where we're working from, the building blocks are themselves out of date? Are they fit for purpose? There was a finger from Julie.
I think it depends. And I think the reason why I say it depends is it depends on which environment you're talking about. If we are in social care, you're absolutely correct. Roper, Tierney and Logan is completely the wrong model. It was a model that was written to support short-term medical care. It was never written to support long-term social care. Now, in a hospital environment, it's still, to a degree, relevant. But it absolutely isn't in your care home, your social care, in your supported living. It's the wrong model. It's too medically based. And I still see people who absolutely insist in writing a care plan for medicines. Well, okay, there may be some reason of what we've got to do to support somebody to take their own medicines and manage their own medicines, but not a whole list of all of the medicines with all of the side effects, because all that's going to do is date really, really quickly. And funnily enough, you've already got it in another place. It's called a MAR. So I never understand this fight and this conflict about what actually should be in a care plan. And the other thing that really bothers me while I'm on the roll is the fact that nobody truly involves the person that it's supposed to be about. And the hospital it never is. And that's, often a framework. It's often a treatment plan or, short-term plan for something else like that. But it's never truly a care plan because they don't need it.
Picking up on that point, how many people do you think have had their care plan reviewed today and they were not present?
Nearly all.
I would say 99.9%. And I've stuck my head above the parapet many times and said this antiquated thing called resident of the day belongs in the Museum of Social Care, along with drag lifts and toileting people. Ben?
Yeah, I completely agree with that because, again, but I think this is symptomatic of social care as a whole, isn't it? Because in my service where I've just gone in, they don't need their care plans reviewing every month, or maybe 3 months, something like that. And you talk about ticking a box, like updating or reviewing these care plans, wherever we're calling them. It is literally a tick box exercise of done, 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 done. It's a time wasting exercise that is just so incredibly pointless because there's no thought involved in it, and the resident isn't involved, the person's not involved in it, because that's too time consuming and nothing's changed anyway. So the system itself, but we're doing it because we're worried that if CQC come in, they're going to go, oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. You haven't done this.
Chomping at the bit here. She's got
I
something
am
really interesting
I've got
to
a
say.
really good question for you, Ben.
Go for it.
Says that you have to review care plans monthly?
I'm not saying you have to, because I said I was reviewing it. I said I was reviewing the process. But I think this is the concern, isn't it? Is that places are doing these things, in my opinion, it should be reviewed when there's changes.
Yes, that's it. CQC is not interested whether you review the monthly, weekly, hourly, secondly. They're not.
As long as you put a review date on it.
Agreed review date.
That's all you've got to put is the agreed review date.
It's an agreed review date.
However, if you nip over the border to Wales, it must be reviewed at least every 3 months.
3 months with the family member, isn't it, as well, though, isn't it? It's got to be with the person or the family member.
With the individual and or their representative as appropriate. So if someone doesn't want the family member there, unless you've got a valid reason to override that, they don't have the family member there.
But the main issue that you want to review a care plan for is when something changes, not just for the sake of it. If you go into hospital and come back, something's changed. You fell, something's changed. You've had a chest infection, something's changed. Surely that's the driver behind it, that something changed.
We haven't heard from Sue for a while.
No, we haven't. Come on, Sue.
I think you just said it before, is that how much involvement is actually with the person, and that's my, what is it for? And I still think it is for, it should something be, this is about the persons, not just about them. It's about who they are as a person and what they want to achieve with whatever they're trying to achieve. But it just seems that it's just very medicalized. It's very much driven within the social care, the healthcare language. Yeah. It should start and finish with the person. And I don't think it does.
I often say that when I used to assess people to use my care services, the first bit of any assessment I'd ever do is communication. Because if you can't assess and identify how people communicate, how can you ever involve them in the process? Mm-hmm. Once we'd established communication, and everyone must have a voice, either their voice, or if they can't have their own voice for valid reasons, who is acting for them? Mm-hmm. Then my next question would be, what matters most to you? And I think that's how you build a plan of care. What matters most to you? Because all of that stuff about medical and personal care and continence, that's way down the list. Yeah. If you ask me what matters most to me, it's going to be my wife, my dogs, in that order.
Watching football.
Oh, Ben, did you watch it last night?
We all watched it last night and we all went, oh!
I didn't.
Sorry, Tim, carry on.
Terrible.
But the rest contributes to that. But we go back to these 12 activities of daily living. Most people don't care about them at all. And I also ask people, if you couldn't write your own care plan, who'd write it for you? And you all know who that person would be in your life. Then ask yourself how accurate it would be. Now, in my case, my wife would have to write it, wouldn't she? Now, she knows me quite well, but she's not going to be 100% accurate. Not at all. I said to her the other day, don't know how this came up, which part of my body have I got a 3-inch long scar on? We've been married for 20 years. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. And she started guessing then. 20 years. She doesn't know. So how accurate are all of these wonderful care plans we've got? I don't think they are.
That doesn't take back? Sorry, Tim. Go on.
Other people's opinion of what's best for their loved one. What they are. Go on, Julie.
I'm just thinking it takes us back to this view that I've heard so often and so many times, which is, but we know them. We don't, like you just said, what you said about your wife, you know, that's the person that you've been married to for 20 years. The average contact with the average resident is 15 minutes a day. You know, that's it. That's all they get in conversation. That's the research base. It's 15 minutes conversation a day. How the hell, given that's the level of conversation that you're going to get, can we anticipate or expect that care staff will know them? So the question then becomes, how do we get a continuity of care, given that we don't know them that well when they come in, we don't know them that well a year later, and we may know them a lot better 3 years later, but how have we gathered that and used that to make sure that all of your care staff can get to that point of a better understanding? And is the care plan, as you so rightly said, Tim, the best method to do that?
Well, it's a legal requirement. I mean, I've just looked up CQC's regulations, and it actually only says you've got to have a care plan in the guidance.
No, it says assess.
It says you've got to assess. It doesn't say you have to write it down.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, and it says you have to have a.
You have to assess. If you can prove you've assessed them and designed a plan of care, it's only the guidance says you've got to write it down.
You've only got to plan what care you're going to deliver or support you're going to deliver based on that individual's assessed needs or desires or wants or choices or preferences, and preferably all of them.
Well, to be honest, I think preferences are more important than needs.
Always.
I mean, I could give this example of medication. I will only take tablets one at a time. Try to get me to take 2 tablets, you're going to be wearing the tablets and a splatter of water. I'm going to be in trouble in 30 years' time if I need care. They're going to give me 6 tablets in a little pot.
But so then, don't we come back to the fact, isn't that what is supposed to be in our care plan, our plan of care? Because not everybody will know that Tim only takes 1 tablet, or not everyone will know that Paula doesn't like a bath, she only likes a shower. Not everyone will know that actually, you know, I don't like somebody doesn't have shampoo or they just like carbolic soap. Isn't that what the plan of care is? Isn't it an identification of the best way to look after? Do we call it a look after plan or a with? You know. But you look at you are looking after somebody, you are supporting them, you're keeping them safe. They're not there with you unless they have some needs. If they didn't have any needs, they would be at home and independent. Do support their needs, but we're looking out for them, we're looking after them to ensure that their needs are met in a safe way.
So if we accept that we have to have them because legislation says, what do we think they should be called? Paula suggested a looking after plan.
I've just thought of something.
Go on, Sue.
Perhaps it's very boring, but my preference plan.
My preference plan. Okay.
Just off the top of my head.
Can I play devil's advocate for that though, and say that sometimes in certain settings it might not be their preference.
No, it might.
It might, you know, in an ideal world, yes, if the person's able to express themselves. But I'm sure we've provided care for people who actually you've had to go with the care plan, and sometimes if you've got someone who doesn't want to be there, they want to bloody well be at home. It's not a preference plan, is it? Because they don't want to be there.
Okay, what would you call it? Or do you like care plan?
To be honest, I genuinely don't know. And I think Sue started the conversation, or someone said, you know, does it matter, or whatever. And I think there is a risk we're thinking too much into it. Although I do like the Welsh idea of the individual plan. I'm a stickler for terminology. I've just gone on a tangent on about 6 carers earlier, where I'm saying to them about terminology that I hate putting them to bed, we're feeding them, we're toileting them, and I'm saying to people, you need to be saying, I'm helping them to bed, I'm assisting them to the toilet, and those sorts of things. And when you do it bloody quietly as well, so that other people can't bloody hear you. And I think those are kind of the more pressing issues than whether we're referring to this as a care plan or not.
Okay. Lucy, you've been really quiet, which is quite unusual for you.
She's looking pensive as well. She looks like she's bursting at the seams to say something.
Well, usually, Tim, you only have me to talk to. And it wouldn't be very nice if I didn't answer. And I'm a very nice person. And obviously, I spend a lot of my time listening to people. So maybe I've just gone into Lucy listening mode.
Okay.
So I was thinking about this. And for me, it's got to be something around how I'm enabled to be the best that I can be. Now, I don't know how you put that together, but that's where I come from.
But I've got a suggestion, and I'm going to pinch something else from Wales as well. So we have a law in Wales, which is the equivalent of the Care Act. It's called the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. And it's got 4 core principles, the first of which is well-being. Why don't we call them well-being plans?
I like that.
That's interesting, because if we think about well-being, we think of what builds well-being. So you've got your social, your financial, you know, you've got your spiritual, your physical, your mental, all of these different
psychological safety, physical safety,
all of these different pillars.
Empowerment, self-worth, independence, choice, control.
Yeah, I like well-being. I like a well-being plan. It's a really nice term that supports the individual, or supposed to. I mean, again, it's all about the content, isn't it? It's really not about the name, but it is all about the content that's in there.
I also think you can't categorise it a wellbeing plan right across every service, because it isn't. It may very well be a wellbeing plan in adult social care, but that will not work in a doctor's surgery or a GP or a dentist or a hospital. It's not a wellbeing, because you're not there for your well-being in a hospital. You're probably there for something specific, short term, and hopefully go home very quickly. So is the question, are we actually throwing the generic phrase, the care plan, across too many different things?
Do you mean go home before something nasty happens to you?
I didn't say that. Look, you know, I've told you my
I'm going to say that. I was in hospital for minor surgery for half an hour, right? I got an infection. I was only there half an hour, and they gave me an infection.
Well done. You're obviously very talented. Like, picking up things.
You've been watching too much TV again, haven't you, Tim?
Yeah.
I was only there half an hour. I didn't know I got an infection from the surgery. I was only there half an hour. That wasn't good for well-being, was it?
So what you're saying then, Tim, is that actually it could be a wellbeing plan even in hospital, because the aim of the hospital is to ensure your well-being by curing you and not making you ill.
I think Paula, they attempted to do one. I'm not sure if they've been successful, and they failed at the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they had to go at curing me. They definitely gave me an infection, cellulitis actually. Well, there we are. I think amoxicillin's nearly fixed it. And I don't know if they've cured me, but yes, that was their intention, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. To cure me.
Well, a lot of the stuff in hospitals is pathways anyway, isn't it? And that's the point. It isn't person-centred in a hospital because there actually isn't time to do that. What you come in for a broken leg, and generally the treatment for a broken leg, whether you're 90 or 9, is not that dissimilar. So that pathway is going to be followed in order to ensure that the vast majority of people achieve the best that they can. But adult social care and the world of supported living and domiciliary care, that's a whole big picture. That is just not medically based. That is wellbeing. And it's a longer term picture as well. I mean, nobody lives in a hospital. Well, they kind of do, but never mind. That's another story. That's mental health, but I'm not going to get into that one. But, when you're in an adult social care environment, you live there. You're not just staying for a few days or a few weeks. It's different.
Okay, so I've had a Google.
Go on.
The World Health Organization says this, so just hold your seats a minute. Well-being is a positive state experienced by individuals and societies. Similar to health, it is a resource for daily life and is determined by social, economic and environmental conditions. Well-being encompasses quality of life and the ability of people and societies to contribute to the world with a sense of meaning and purpose. Focusing on well-being supports the tracking of the equitable distribution of resources, overall thriving and sustainability. A society's well-being can be determined by the extent to which it is resilient, builds capacity for action, and is prepared to transcend challenges.
That shut us all up, didn't it?
Everyone's thinking, what does that mean?
Yeah, we're all going, what?
What?
Yeah, very definitely scratch your head.
Fundamentally, I see it as building blocks, right? I see there are lots of building blocks to our overall well-being, and it could be that might be, like I say, the environment. So if I need care, I need support. I need to know what that's like for my environment and the environment I'm in. I need to know what that's like from a social perspective, so my interactions with people, relationships, all that kind of stuff. I need to know what that's like from a physical health perspective and then a mental health perspective, and also how that's going to impact me financially. So all of these things are things that we should be putting into the assessment process, surely?
Surely, yes. And that's another thing that I can rant about. There's a disconnect between assessments, planning of care, and reviews. It's like they're 3 totally separate things in a lot of places. And I see so many assessments where the person who did the assessment didn't like the form. They've ignored most of the sections and written on the back the stuff you can't read. And then very little of that finds its way into that plan of care. And then when they do the review, they seem to ignore everything and put no changes.
You've also got another problem, Tim, before we even get into that. The assessment that you do when somebody's in the building is very different than the assessment that you do to determine whether they can get into the building in the first.
Yeah.
And your first one should be your exclusions criteria that says why you can't take them or why you would take them before you assess how to meet those needs.
Far too many care providers are agreeing to provide care and support for people whose needs they cannot meet today, let alone in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And they're ticking boxes by completing lots of forms that they think they should fill out and to review them on a monthly basis, which they don't fundamentally review and mean nothing and don't get read.
And then they're regulated on the basis, have they done that?
Exactly.
And if they've done that, you can be rated as good.
Oh yeah, if you write into your policy that we're going to review care plans monthly and then don't, the regulators are going to say, well, why are you not following your own policy? Absolutely. Yeah. That's true. But if you follow NICE guidelines or the Welsh guidelines, you won't do them monthly anyway, but that's another bugbear that I've got. But the question becomes, what is the purpose of this thing we call a care plan? What's its point?
For what purpose?
I can answer that. I got an opinion on that. I read
one of them, Tim.
I read one of these documents and I just ask myself, could I provide care and support for this individual in the way they prefer to meet their needs in a way that's safe. If I think I can, I think that's a good document. If there are loads of questions that I just can't find the answer to, or it's contradict the information, it's not a good document. But I just think, can a stranger follow this? If a stranger could follow it, then, because effectively that's what happens with bank staff, agency staff, new staff, they're strangers, aren't they? It's the only document they've got. And that is my judge of what makes it a good care.
But it brings you back to the thing that Paula raised at the beginning around how many are actually even read. And I think one of the things I used to ask when I used to have a previous existence and a previous job was, if I put all your care plans in the bin, would it make any difference to the care that you provided? And 99.9% of the time, the answer to that was no.
No.
Which told you how valuable those care plans were to that organisation.
Actually, I'd say it probably would make a difference, because you'd probably save time by not reviewing and reading, by not going through them. So actually it would improve the quality of care, because they'd have more time to actually see the people.
And you'd save money because you wouldn't be spending forever printing. You wouldn't be forever looking for a template. You wouldn't be forever amending a template, paying for a system, or thinking about archiving it. And so there you get a room back, because you wouldn't have 50 years worth of paper stored in a room that's disorganised.
There you go. We've just saved health and social care so much money.
You can't store it in your head, because we're not psychically able to give it to all of our staff. If you've got a large service with 60 different people living in it and a whole load of 70, 80 staff, how do you expect them all to know the same thing for the same people if you haven't got a document that's in writing? You can call it a care plan. I mean, I used to say you can write it on the back of a fag packet and stick it to the ceiling as long as it works.
And I think that that is the most amazing way to start to wrap this up. Julie and her fag packet.
I miss me fags. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, own it.
I don't think we've answered the question, but we've exercised the brain cells for an hour or so, and we've got some opinions. I don't think it's a solution that anyone can come up with, but I need to say thank you very much to our esteemed guests. Just remind people who they are. So we've got Julie, Sue, Paula, and Ben, and of course Lucy. And this was episode 16 of the Lucy and Tim show. At this point, we normally say people need to like us and subscribe and stuff, but you know, we say that a lot, don't we, Lucy?
Yeah, I'm bored of that. But you see, the thing is, you said that we haven't actually answered the question.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we never actually answer the question.
We don't.
Because the whole purpose of why we do this is to get people to think. We're not here to tell you what you should do. And fundamentally, if you want to run a good service, you've got to be thinking. You can't be doing what you think you should be doing, or what somebody's told you to do, or it's the way we've always done it. You've got to use this. And that's why we're not going to come up with a solution.
I'd like to ask, just because I don't know the answer, have you seen care plans where you thought to yourself, you know what, these are absolutely amazing. You know people are reading them, you know people taking them. So what is it? Okay, if you've seen that, how do we get that out there and make it real so people can follow it? What are the barriers? Anyway, that's a whole new.
It's a whole new.
I have seen it, and it was a story. They didn't put it titles. They just told the story of that person. It was only 3 pages long. It was beautifully written. It was very much about that person. You know, things like, I like watching Richard to make sure when he's on the telly, I can watch him. You know, those kinds of things. It was a proper story about the person. But Tim, coming back to the thing that you said about not answering the question, I think you're right. I don't think it's for us to answer the question, but I think this little group of people, of 6 people, we're all on the same page about it.
Yeah. To answer the question, I would say yes, I have seen it. And I ought to say that because I used to be a care provider. I quite like the versions we had 15 years ago. Needs, outcomes, actions, linked to risk assessment. There was a bit in there for review. How well did we meet the person's outcomes? If we did it, why not? What we're going to do about it.
That's it. Yeah.
I designed that 15 years ago. I quite liked it. Then, is it fit for purpose today? Probably need updating, but it enabled people to look after the complex people we used to support.
And I think fundamentally that's the point, isn't it? The purpose of writing the documentation has been lost, and it's now a different purpose rather than it being about the individual, which brings us full circle back to the beginning of the conversation.
Yes. And at which point we need to say, we really do need to wrap this up. So we say thank you to our very special guests. The first time we've had 4 guests on the show. And now we need to say to Lucy, stop the recording, Lucy.
Bye, Tim.
Bye, Lucy.